Alright, good evening ladies and gents. Welcome to the final, number 5. It's been a whole 5 long weeks of Thunderwood Sim2Race. Just as we now jump straight into qualifying, no whiffle, no waffle, we're straight into the action right here with Samuel Rasool currently trying to claim yet another pole position and convert that into yet another win. Behind him, where he very much usually is, right on his tail trying to chase him down, is Ollie Wilmot here. The number 17 bright green car, here he is, looking very, very racy indeed, and he is looking to really make the most of the final round of Thunderwood Sim2Race. Now, for some of our drivers, the championship standings are already mathematically rounded up, by which I mean not rounded up, as in I mean rounded finished. Rounded finished. Whereas for some other drivers, everything is still to play for. As we look here, we have Ollie Wilmot. Then just behind him, we have Rob Dowsett as well, who is also in the fight, and he is currently running in, well, I mean, second, third, fourth. It's a very, very close fight between all of these guys, and they're going to be keen to really make the most of this final round. Now, the final round here is different to a lot of our other Thunderwood Sim2Race events, in that we are running 5... Oh, did you see the screen has gone down? Oh no, we're still live, do apologize. Okay, we're back. Where it was, yes. So, this event in particular, the final, is that little bit more spectacular than our previous events in that it's ever so slightly longer, and as we move into the race, there will be one twist in the tail that perhaps everyone is expecting, but until it happens, we won't really talk about it. So, race streamer Rob then currently in the pit lane with provisional pole by 0.3 of a second ahead of Samuel Rasool. Now, we've seen between these two drivers a very, very close fight up front. Rob Dowsett did miss 1 or 2 rounds, and since he's been back, he has been really, really fighting at the front. He was perhaps one of the first drivers to really take the fight to Samuel Rasool at Goodwood at round 3. And then following that, also at wherever we were last week, where was that? With the Clios. Yes, Laguna Seca, that's the one. So those of you who watched last week witnessed an incredibly gruesome and brutal, but clean, fight from start to end between Samuel Rasool and Rob Dowsett, sometimes with Tino Schilling in the mix too. And at Goodwood, the same two at the sharp end, fighting all the way through the race, with wildcard guest driver Mantas Schlögeris thrown in for some of the fight. Now, this is the final of the season. Of course, that sounds very grand. Our season was only 5 weeks long. But as you can see, as if we knew lockdown would be eased today, today is the final of Thunderwood Sim2Race. Now, the whole point of Thunderwood Sim2Race, our raison d'etre, if you want, is to find a particularly fast sim enthusiast, a car enthusiast, who wants to make a little bit more inroads in terms of real-life motorsport, because at Thunderwood Racing, that's what we're about. Simulation is great, all of this stuff, superb, love it, but nothing compares to real-life motorsport, and what spurred Thunderwood Sim2Race is actually... Let's actually have a look a little bit more at this sim stuff. What's the deal here? And off the back of that, we thought, look, motorsport's kind of died right now. It will be back at some point, but when it comes back, let's really come back with a bang, having empowered someone else to come with us. And so whoever the winner of Thunderwood Sim2Race will be, will receive from us a little bit of support in terms of progressing their real-life motorsport ambitions. Just as we ride on board here then with Oliver White, just coming through the imaginatively named first hairpin at Tsukuba. Now, a lot of circuits around the world have very specific corner names. Tsukuba, less so. So now he's coming into what's known as Dunlop Corner, as you can see, punctuated by lots of Dunlop iconography around the corner. Then now coming through ATR, just now And coming into the imaginatively named second hairpin as we ride on board with Oliver White's McDonald's colored Mazda MX-5. Now down the back straight, he is definitely loving it. We come down to face the also imaginatively named last corner. Whoever was designing and naming the corners at Tsukuba clearly perhaps took a half day, or was maybe a little bit hungover and not terribly imaginative that day. Now, as he comes back to begin his next flying lap and dives into the first hairpin. Now, as you can see, the cars that we've picked this week are the Mazda Roadster touring car. Now, it's not a car that, strictly speaking, exists in real life, although, of course, the car it's based on does. This is a Gran Turismo special, which reimagines Mazda's very, very popular MX-5, Miata, Roadster, whatever you want to call it, and looks at what would happen if that were to be built as a works GT1 style car. Perhaps not GT1, but, you know, a works touring car. As such, it weighs a mere 975 kilograms, and all of these cars run the same spec. That's part of our shtick at Thunderwood Sim2Race, to avoid tuning being a differentiating factor, perhaps someone's engineering prowess, how good they are at setting up a chassis. What we're most interested in is just driving. So everyone is in the same car, same spec, 975 kg, and this engine from the factory is tuned to 205 horsepower, just as we see Rob Dowsett getting a big slide there out of the first hairpin. So that slide that we see is really something we'll be seeing a lot of today. Just saying that, just as we have James Partridge going off the track. Where is he? He's currently running in 8th. Let's just ride on board with him. Actually, let's have a look at Max Chowdhury. We haven't seen Max Chowdhury in a little while. So there he is. Okay. In Thunderwood Racing Pink, one of our guest drivers, Max Chowdhury. So we haven't seen him in a few rounds, but he's a very welcome face back in the paddock. And as you can see, these cars are moving around a lot. So it's a combination of a few factors. Firstly, the fact that it is a rear-wheel drive car that's quite powerful for it's you know, it's an absolute featherweight at 975 kgs. It practically weighs the same as a tub of Pringles. But it's also rear-wheel drive, very revvy, naturally aspirated and responsive, and as part of testing the drivers, we have also locked all assists off. No traction control, no stability control, nothing like that, as we can just see Max Chowdhury getting a little bit of a fishtail coming out of the first hairpin, and now coming into Dunlop, and then flick-flacking into 30 ATR. Sideways coming out of that. Not only all of these things, but also these cars, just to make things a little bit more interesting, are on road tires. You would imagine a touring car would perhaps run on slicks. Not so at Thunderwood Sim2Race, where to really test our drivers, we have put them on treaded comfort road tires. So there you can see Nick Horn there just getting a little bit sideways coming out of the first corner, now blasting through the S corner and into the first hairpin with Samuel Rasool hot on his tail. Nick Horn then 1.2 seconds off provisional pole and a mere 600ths of a second behind his nearest rival, James Partridge, who we're just going to switch to now in his wonderful Smurfy blue MX-5, which is really similar to a color they came from the factory with, although that is just a coincidence because our drivers choose their number and they choose their color before the season is underway. And the drivers don't even know what kind of cars they're going to be dealing with as the season progresses. These are revealed on a week-by-week basis to keep things exciting for us, the viewers, and for the drivers too. But what that means is, by having a small number of drivers who we get to know very well over the course of the season, with a prescribed color scheme, with a prescribed race number, and with that transparency that comes with all of this, I mean, in fact, I can even bring up his photograph, there you go, it doesn't get any more transparent than that. What that means is, our drivers are incentivized to drive a little bit more cleanly, and a little bit more professionally than what you may see in other leagues, which are just a massive Babylonian mess of all kinds of just everything coming together. A massive mixing pot of anonymous faces who will do one race and then disappear, and in the meantime cause absolute carnage in their wake. So we've avoided that here by getting to know our drivers very well. In fact, there's a non-stop WhatsApp group constantly buzzing off. Our drivers are setting up practice sessions in the run-up to the weekend, and it's just built a little bit of a community that it's something we carried across from real-life motorsport experience, and you have that accountability to each other that really breeds very good driving standards then. Just as James Partridge comes into the second hairpin, race streamer Rob then jumps back onto provisional pole by a mere 200ths of a second, really fighting with Samuel Rasool then, which they did last week and they did the week before. Two very fast gentlemen indeed, as we can just see then Rob taking a bit of a breather in the pit lane with his team just hanging out on the pit wall. Race streamer Rob then doing very well indeed. Oh, there we go, I lost my button for my keyboard. Just wanted to bring up his wonderful photograph. And anyway, so he's currently sitting there, not really loads of action. So Samuel Rasool then down in second place, 0.027, 200ths of a second off provisional pole. His car looking a little bit battered. So clearly he has been really forced to push to set his lap time. Now, while our drivers are, of course, encouraged to push, to race hard, but to race fairly, that's the whole point, we do also police our driving standards fairly rigorously. In terms of, just as we can see, Nick Horn then very genteelly getting out of the way to allow past the cars on their hot lap. Some real discipline then from real-life motorsport. So our track limits are policed by Gran Turismo itself, the video game simulation, whatever you want to call it. We left those decisions up to a machine in terms of to police when a car has gone off the track. In terms of contact, those are policed by real-life human beings, because that's too important a judgment to leave up to a computer, currently, as things stand. Given, we've seen controversies in iRacing, Gran Turismo, and so on, a machine isn't always able to grasp the nuances of wheel-to-wheel racing. So that's handled by our stewards. Joining us is John Birrell, who will be watching all of our cameras very closely, monitoring the WhatsApps, monitoring the traffic to make sure that everyone is doing what they should be doing and not doing what they should not be doing. And if they are caught doing such things, then we have many penalties at our disposal, which we will throw at them with no hesitation. However, we are fair, and I've actually not yet handed anything out, just as, who is that? Nick Horn, there we go. So as we were just saying, these tires, just flicking his lights there, and he's back in the pit lane. Oh dear. These cars can be quite a handful. Let's just maybe ride with him on his outlap then, just as he comes through. So we do have ghosting normally turned off. You can just see he's left his indicators on, because why not? I mean, that's what's happening here with James Partridge. James Partridge allowing him through. He has had enough. He's going to cool down for a lap and then perhaps try to attack again. So Nick Horn then currently running in 9th, just 600ths of a second behind James Partridge, his nearest rival and the physically nearest car to him right now, which you can just see in the background, coming under the Dunlop gantry. So Nick Horn then, with his right indicator ablaze, dives into the second hairpin to begin the final sector of his flying lap. That's a lie, this isn't his outlap, he has just come from the pit lane. So currently running in 9th. Let's just take a look at our guest driver then. So this week we have I've lost my notes. No, hang on a second. Oh dear. Ah, yes. Yes. Oh dear, let's try that again. So this week's guest driver, and new to Thunderwood Sim2Race, is fellow sim racer, a colleague of Samuel Rasool's, And this is Alexander Milojevic from Serbia in the number 18 car, very confusingly similar to Nick Horn's machine, but hopefully we'll try to find the difference between them. Currently running 0.4 seconds off provisional pole. So this is his first time at Thunderwood Sim2Race, and already he is extremely on the pace and on course for provisional podium in qualifying and a second row start. Or so you would think. Dun dun dun. Who knows? Who knows? Life is a mystery. Anyway, back to Samuel Rasool then. Only 1/100th of a second away from provisional pole with three... Oh! Just as Liam Meredith makes a little bit of a mess. Where has he gone? And he is now paused and quit back to the pit lane. An understandable move indeed then. So let's go back to Samuel Rasool. Tidy and clean as always. As much as we were bigging up the nature of the car, the appalling nature of the tires that we forced them onto, the accelerated tire wear to make driving that little bit more challenging, the fact that all assists are switched off, yada yada yada, Samuel Rasool is generally very clean, very surgical in terms of his inputs, and as a result, smooth as fast. So he's currently running in second by just a feather, very eager to try to make that back just as he comes into the last corner, which is his actual name, I know. Just finishing up last corner to come onto the start, finish straight. Is he able to improve on his best time so far? No. Okay. So out he stays to try to do that again. Now, of course, these tires are wearing during qualifying as they are during the race, which wasn't the case through the whole Thunderwood Sim2Race season, but it's a new change that we've implemented in the more recent events. Oh, just as he gets very sideways coming out of the first hairpin. So perhaps the tire wear that we just discussed, taking a very tight line there through ATR and Dunlop, just now coming into the second hairpin. Let's just look at his line through there. Nice early turn in, but a late apex, and then washes out wide towards the exit. You can just see a little bit of a fishtail coming out of there. So even with his very delicate and precise inputs, still getting a little bit sideways. But this is the kind of car that benefits really from a little bit of slip angle. It doesn't have grippy tires, right, at any corner of the car. So it's lacking grip not only in the back, but also in the front. So a lot of our drivers will find themselves struggling with turn-in. Less so as the tires wear, because they wear more at the back than the front, and they'll give it a bit more of a front bite as the tires wear down. But when they're fresh and or worn equally, they will struggle with turn-in driving conventionally. What this means is this Mazda on these tires really benefit from a little bit of slip angle. And also, it means that your weight transfer is absolutely key in terms of loading up your front tires so they grip into the pavement. In doing so, you get your rears a little bit light, and you really turn the car around its own axis. And this is a unique challenge that perhaps our drivers haven't come across in our earlier sportier tires that we've been relying on earlier throughout the season. Let's then have a look at Ollie Wilmot, who is currently down in 5th, 0.5 of a second off the lead of provisional pole, and as you can see, our top 5 are separated by less than a second. Very close indeed. Let's take a look at Ollie White, just 0.003 of a second behind Oliver Wilmot as the checkered flag comes out and our drivers now finish their final flying laps. Let's just see whether Oliver White can improve on that as he washes a little bit wide, perhaps doesn't take as tight a line as he would like. Just coming through the back straight now into the last corner. And let's see whether he is able to catch those 0.003 of a second to overtake Ollie Wilmot to take 5th in qualifying, and thus putting himself in the qualifying points. Is he able to do so? So he takes the checkered flag and cannot improve on his personal best, meaning he remains in 6th place. Ollie Wilmot then still out on track. Nope, you can see his hazards are out, he is done. Let's have a look at Liam Meredith then. We haven't really ridden with him much, even though he's cooling off. Right, all of our drivers are done. Never mind, we're not going to get any riding done. So, there you go. So, by the old looks of things... Oh, we have an apology here come up on the screen from race streamer Rob to Chris Brookie. Sorry about that. We have noted the genteelness. Thank you for your sportsmanship. Let's perhaps take a look if anyone raises any complaints afterwards. The qualifying has now ended. So, Samuel Rasool then starting on pole. Or he would be, except we have a reverse grid. Which no one knew about. No one knew this. But hey, when you run the series, this is what you can do. We have a reverse grid. So, Max Chowdhury on pole and Samuel Rasool absolutely stone dead last. Chris Brookie then second, James Partridge third, Nick Horn fourth, Liam fifth, Ollie White sixth, Ollie Wilmot seventh, and off they go. Max Chowdhury gets out of the way, just as James Partridge then takes the lead. Leading into turn one, Samuel Rasool really diving up the inside to try to make some progress in the field. Of course, the first lap is the key moment for doing this, when everyone is very bunched up together. Let's actually see. Let's see some racecraft. Oh my goodness, everything is upside down. Is James Partridge going to be able to take everything? He can't believe his luck. Oh, this is way too funny. Way too funny. And just to clarify again, dear viewers, no one knew we were going to have a reverse grid. So they are all thinking, wait, what? As James Partridge then still maintaining his lead just ahead of Liam Meredith. Then comes Ollie Wilmot up to third, really making some good progress there. Alexander Milojevic up to fourth, then Rob Dowsett in fifth, Chris Brookie sixth, Tino Schilling in seventh. Let's look down the field. Then we have Oliver White in eighth. Samuel Rasool has climbed up to ninth with a fight back already. 23 minutes of the race remaining. This is indeed a marathon, not a sprint. So our drivers really need to pace themselves and pick the best moment to attack, because the fastest guys are at the back and arguably the slowest guys are at the front. So really it's a case of not getting ahead of yourself and planning your moves carefully and strategically to not cause any mayhem as you fight up the field. Tino Schilling there, still in seventh place, looking around the outside, and now dives up the inside of Chris Brook, just touches him a little bit wide, and thus allowing through Oliver White as well. Not quite there, running side by side. Ollie White just dips in to get that slipstream coming into the last corner down the back straight, pulls out alongside Chris Brookie, but can't quite make that work. Runs wide just as Samuel Rasool... Oh, what's happening there? Samuel Rasool unable to make that move past Oliver White. Let's just have a look at that fight again. So here we go. He's going to look round the outside into the first corner, perhaps using a switchback as Ollie White runs wide, but he keeps that really tight and defensive to keep Samuel behind him. This is fun. Oh, there he goes. He just touching, unable to make that move stick now through the second hairpin. Tsukuba is a notoriously tricky circuit to overtake on, and it's almost as though the people behind Thunderwood Sim2Race were trying to give the audience something interesting to look at today. We do like to mix it up. I'm finding this far too entertaining. Because not only do we have a back-to-front grid in the final of the year, which no one knew about, it's also on the circuit that's one of the hardest to overtake on. So what are you going to do? So while Samuel Rasool then continues to battle Ollie White, which is a fight we haven't yet seen. This is a new matchup at Thunderwood Sim2Race, so let's see how these two guys get on. One, a keen and experienced track day enthusiast, in the form of Oliver White, the other keen and experienced sim racing enthusiast in the form of Samuel Rasool. Just now, as they come into the second hairpin, he's having a look. Just gaining ever so slightly, inches forwards towards Oliver White, but unable to make a move just yet. Naturally, given how clean our racing is, they're really choosing the right moment at which to attack. And I suspect this fight and this strategizing will go on for a little while yet. At the front, oh, here we go. So we have Alexander Milojevic then just fighting with Ollie Wilmot, who's currently in second place, just behind Liam Meredith. So everyone is still very bunched up indeed. So what that means is James Partridge has now fallen back down by the looks of things to 6th from where he was at one point running in first. Still have 20 minutes remaining, so just about now, we've now started the regular race distance for Thunderwood Sim2Race. So we've had a bonus 5 minutes of this bumper episode, and now we're back to normal scheduling, other than the grid is back to front. That being said, Samuel Rasool then just getting cozy. Oh, we can just see James Partridge. Oh. What would you even say? Look at these four all bunched together like happy little Lego bricks. So at some point, Samuel has found his way past Oliver White. Next in his crosshairs are Nick Horn, Chris Brook, and James Partridge, as they all head together, very bunched up through the second hairpin, and now on the back straight, 5 abreast. There's a corner coming up. What are they doing? They can't do 5 abreast. Or 3. 3 into... Oh, here we go. So who was the chicken? Samuel Rasool then expertly just dives up the inside of all of them to take 6th place, and now is perfectly positioned on the inside line to take Oliver White up the inside into the first corner. Doesn't quite make that work and is stuck behind Ollie White yet again, which is exactly where he did not want to be, yet he's finding himself fighting Oliver White yet again. As they all now come into the first hairpin, do apologize. Still bunched up. And of course, a botched overtaking move from Samuel Rasool compromises his own line and pushes him further back towards the people behind him, namely Alexander Milojevic and Chris Brook. So, just as he pushes just a little love tap on Oliver White to push him wide, doesn't quite make it work, and in doing so also allows through Alexander Milojevic in the number 18 gunmetal grey car. They now run side by side. These two experienced sim racing friends, colleagues, enemies, as they come round the last corner now, flying the pure sim racer flag, coming across the start finish line then, and breaking into turn 1. So desperately trying to find a way past Oliver White, but unable to just yet. Again, this is a notoriously difficult circuit on which to overtake. If we look at the fight at the front, we still have Liam Meredith right at the sharp end, followed ever so closely by Ollie Wilmot, Rob Dowsett, and Tino Schilling, just as he gets very sideways through Dunlop, and thus allowing through Ollie Wilmot, but he positions himself on the inside just to try to take that position back as they now come side by... Oh, what's going on here? Oh dear, Ollie Wilmot then pushed off by... It looks... That's too close to call. So perhaps that's our first casualty, or the first on-screen casualty then, of this very close race, as our drivers are now nearing half distance of our extra long 25-minute race, and the moves are getting desperate just as Tino Schilling dives up the inside from a mile back into the turn 1 to overtake Liam Meredith, and he's now clear of them both, and we will be looking to really build a gap now. As Liam tries to tuck in behind him to try to take the inside line through the chicane, but is unable to do so. They touch again. Just as you can see, the moves getting slightly desperate, as it's just so difficult to overtake here. Without a little bit of contact, a little bit of force, a little bit of elbowing your way through, it'll be very difficult to make a move work here at Tsukuba. Just as Liam Meredith then loses out to Rob Dowsett, who just muscles his way past in the second sector. So here we go, let's just look at him now. He's right on the tail of Tino Schilling. So right at the front we have Tino Schilling from Rob Dowsett, from Liam Meredith, from Oliver White, from Alexander Milojevic, from Samuel Rasool, and then Chris Brook in 7th. So let's have a look at what he's up to. These guys are all very bunched up as well. I mean, if you look at the map in the top right corner of your screen, you can see most of our drivers, most of our drivers are on the same straight. And when you consider how short this circuit is, it means that they are literally all on top of each other. And we haven't even come to pit stops yet. What happens when our drivers pit? Someone pits first, someone pits later. Where in the traffic does that drop them? Our tires are likely to go off at around the 12th minute of the race, so the pit lane window is perhaps opening very soon now. And really, where our drivers come back into the running could determine the remainder of their race. They will be trying to pick the right moment to pit out into clean air and make the most of their fresh tires to really make some progress. But get that wrong, and you're dropped right back into the traffic, throwing hemorrhaging time away. So just as we see now then, we have James Partridge coming into the pit lane, currently 9 seconds away from the lead. As you can see, his gang just out here ready to receive him. In he comes, up on the air jacks, on go the fresh tires. There you go, and he is done, out he goes. And now back at the front end of the grid, Tino Schilling then still fighting with Rob Dowsett. These two are so well matched, and we saw a similar thing last time at Laguna Seca, where these guys were at each other's throats for the entire first half of the race. And we have basically a replay of exactly that today, where now they've built a little bit of a distance, just as race streamer Rob Dowsett comes down the inside to put himself side by side with Tino Schilling coming into the final corner. You could just see the cute little pop-up lights on the Mazda as he celebrates his overtake? No, he was ahead already, wasn't he? No matter, says Rob Dowsett as he sticks it up the inside. Tino runs ever so slightly wide, manages to cover off Rob's line, just coming into braking into turn 1. Very risky, very close indeed, and that could have resulted in some serious contact, but these drivers are so skilled and so aware of their surroundings and how they're placing their car that they managed that beautifully. Just as Rob Dowsett just takes a sneaky little peek down the inside of Tino Schilling, perhaps not intending to overtake per se, but making his presence very known to Tino in a very well-known and stereotyped racing trick. Just as Tino then washes a little bit wide, perhaps cracking under that pressure we just mentioned, and just allowing Rob Dowsett to peek along next to him, but oh no. Rob Dowsett then just colliding with the pit lane entry. There we go. And now that promotes Samuel Rasool up to second place, who has not yet pitted, let's remember. And we are basically just past the midpoint of the race. Samuel Rasool then currently running in second place. He has done very well to fight his way up from last on the grid. He has not yet pitted for tires, and he will be doing all the sums in his brain, looking at the map, trying to work out when to pit in order to best position himself on his outlap with as little traffic as possible. Just as we watch with him on board as he comes into the second hairpin, takes a beautifully tight line, managing the tire wear really well, as though they haven't worn at all. Taking the exact same line that he normally would do, and in fact I suspect the exact same lap times as he normally would. Very clean and very tidy indeed. Just as he now dives into the pit lane. As you can see, his McLaren-esque team are out in force to swap these tires over. Here he comes. This is the best part of Gran Turismo, man. Look at this. There you go. And they're on. And off he goes. And he's now back out in 9th place. Tino Schilling then still running in 1st. A lot of talking. I need a drink. So, Tino Schilling then, still running in 1st place, still fighting with Rob Dowsett, but let's bear in mind, Rob Dowsett has pitted, so I guess that means Tino Schilling's pitted too, and Samuel Rasool has pitted too, and he is back out in 3rd. So, that is a master stroke from Samuel Rasool to go from 5th or 4th or wherever he was to gain a position during the pit stops. His calculations worked out perfectly, and he is within sight of the 2 front runners with 10 minutes to go. No more scheduled pit stops. They now race until it's lights out. And of course, Tino Schilling and Rob Dowsett will be mindful of the fact that Samuel Rasool is closing in on them. And as they both fight and trip over each other, before they know it, they're going to have a 3rd member joining the party. Just as we have a look then at Liam Meredith just behind him, let's hear what he had to say coming into this week's final race.
The championship has had its ups and downs for sure, and some of the performances from me have been suboptimal, but it has been great to drive with this grid. I've got to say a big thank you to the guys back at the factory. Today I'm going to go out, try and hit my delta and finish off this championship in style.
So Liam has performed very strong. Oh, just as he loses a place to a guest driver, Alexander Milojevic, who, being a guest driver, does not qualify for points, so that doesn't affect the stat. Oh, there we go. Who cares about that when they're literally touching under braking coming into the last corner? Liam Meredith then so desperately trying to cling on to that position, but just loses out to Alexander through the corner, and also loses ground to Ollie Wilmot too, who's snaking around under braking, trying to find a way past, but unable to do so just yet. Ollie Wilmot then very quick all year, perhaps finding himself not quite where he wants to be right now. He clearly has a lot of pace. He feels he can go very quickly indeed, and he will be trying to find a way desperately past Liam Meredith, and then Alexander just ahead of them, because he is very regularly a podium contender. And with 8 minutes remaining, he will be trying to find a way past ASAP, just as he takes a look then at the slipstream down the back straight, but is too far back to try to do anything significant, just as our drivers are all still incredibly boxed in together. All sharing the same straight when we're 25 minus 8 is 17 minutes into the race, and they're all still bunched up together. Meanwhile, at the fight at the front then, Samuel Rasool closing ever so more intensely, closing getting closer to the 2 front runners who, in the process of their fight, have really hemorrhaged away their lead. Naturally, when you're fighting for track position, when you're trying to go for an overtake, when you're defending your line, none of these are optimal lines through a corner. You're compromising your speed, you're compromising your approach, and the longer your fight goes on, the more time you're throwing away. Just as we can see then Rob Dowsett flicking his lights at Tino Schilling just to try to put him off as they come into last corner, just a touch on the brakes, perhaps throw it down into 3rd gear if they're feeling saucy, and then just ride the curb on the exit. That's really riding a lot of curb on the exit, and falling ever further back towards Samuel Rasool, who is now right on them. He is now part of this fight. Look at that. He is less than a car length away from 2nd place. He has fought incredibly hard to come from last, stone dead last, to now being 3rd with 6 minutes remaining, as he looks up the inside then of Rob Dowsett, who gets very sideways out of this first hairpin. all taking the same beautiful tight line there through Dunlop as they now come into ATR. Breaking into the second hairpin then, Samuel as ever hunting, sniffing for an opportunity to make a move on Rob Dowsett. There isn't one just yet, as they still continue running in formation. Tino Schilling keeping his colleagues at bay. These three always fighting at the very front, and with 5 minutes remaining, they found themselves right in their comfort zone, right where they feel they belong. Just breaking into turn one then. Perhaps the... Oh! Just as we can see Tino Schilling there getting sideways, really gripping into the road and losing a lot more time than he would have wanted to through there. Just coming through the S-bend now into the first hairpin. But, you know, the circuit is so tight that even when you make a mistake, provided you can keep your car on the grey stuff, you are a physical barrier to being overtaken. This is one of the key challenges at Tsukuba, and it's also why racing doesn't really happen at Tsukuba either. Because it's a very difficult circuit to actually race at. There is nowhere to overtake. So, as we enter now the final 4 minutes and 59 seconds of the final race of the season, Tino Schilling is desperately thinking how to best defend his position. And of course, Rob Dowsett and Samuel Rasool are equally desperately trying to think of how to convert their current podium into a win. Elsewhere down the grid then, coming into turn one, Ollie Wilmot still in the fight with Liam Meredith, and just ahead of them Alexander Milojevic. And just behind that you can just about see Ollie White there as well. They're all running 7 seconds off the lead, there or thereabouts. Just breaking now into the first hairpin. You can just... It's very realistic. You can see the little man really getting loads of steering angle through there. So everyone takes the same beautiful tight line then through Dunlop into ATR into braking for the second hairpin. No change here, as you can just see the marbles building on the outside of a circuit. That's a very cool detail. Ollie White then running just behind them, and just in front of Chris Brook then, currently in 8th, who you saw in the intro of today's race twice, getting his A90 Supra very sideways indeed at round 2 of Thenwood Sim2Race at Autopolis shortcut layout. Very fast, very fighty driver, and looking to see what he can do to close the gap to Oliver White in the final minutes of the session. As we just see James Partridge then getting wide over the exit. Wide but clean through the first turn, or first corner, do apologize, as is its official name. Let's have a look at Nick Horn then, currently running in 10th. Just ahead of Max Chowdhury then in 11th. And let's just have a look at the fight at the front. We can just see something going on here. Not quite, but on the map they all looked very bunched together, so that was maybe a false alarm that I got very excited about. But perhaps let's just stay with this fight a little bit longer then, as we just have a look as Tino Schilling comes into the last corner. Rob Dowsett really trying to sniff through an inside line, unable to make one work. And now all braking side by side. You could just see Rob Dowsett really moving around on those tires as these Mazdas now start to get quite squirrelish on their worn rubber, coming into the final 2 minutes of the race. So then, coming into now the second hairpin, our 3 leaders still running unchanged, but definitely one to watch. Oh, let's just have a look at what's happening further here. Oh, nothing. Not quite. Let's watch the fight at the front in that case. Okay. Oh! Tino Schilling runs wide in the last corner, allowing Rob Dowsett the best look at first place that he has had all race, and he takes that and says thank you very much as they touch coming into the first corner. Absolutely nanometers splitting them. And Rob Dowsett muscles his way through that first complex to take the lead. Tino Schilling then, his headlights up, just trying to make himself a presence, a big and scary flashing lighted presence in Rob Dowsett's mirrors, just to put him off, just to knock him offline. That tiny, tiny little bit so he can find an inch through. But no. Unable to do so yet. These drivers are so fast and so, oh my goodness, so precise and right on the edge of grip that one small distraction, one small deviation can lose them a lot of time. So Tino Schilling there just trying to induce a little bit of hesitation, just something, some kind of distraction in Rob's lights, just to put him off for a split second and find a way past down the inside, perhaps, of last corner. Unable to make that work, himself runs wide and falls closer still to Samuel Rasool, who takes a different line to the two front runners just to try something a little bit different to them and try to make up some time as we now come into the final lap. Rob Dowsett then on course for a win, just ahead of Tino Schilling. Samuel Rasool also very sideways. This is basically Formula Drift now, or D1 GP as we are in Japan. Holding formation, fighting right until the very end. This could all still go wrong yet, as they just all dive into the second hairpin. Tino Schilling again runs a little bit wide. Samuel Rasool then still in third place. Down the back straight and looking to see where he can make a difference coming into final corner. Rob Dowsett then manages to keep it tidy, keeps it clean, his car battered and bruised, and he comes home to claim his first win of Thunderwood Sim2Race as Tino Schilling gets very sideways, and Samuel Rasool comes home in third place. Alexander Milojevic then fourth on his Thunderwood Sim2Race debut, Liam Meredith fifth, Ollie Wilmot sixth, Oliver White 7th, Chris Brookie 8th, James Partridge 9th, Chris Horn 10th, and Max Chowdhury in 11th. And these are our results. Oh my goodness. I had a lot to say there. Look at that. Went up 9 positions. I love how it tells you that. And fastest race. That's very impressive. So let's just have a look then at our final results. In first, we have Rob Dowsett. Second, Tino Schilling. Third, Samuel Rasool. All 3 of our podium finishers doing incredibly well, having started right at the back of the grid to find and claw and fight their way right back up to the front. Fourth, Alexander Milojevic on his debut with Thunderwood Racing. Fifth, Liam Meredith. Sixth, Oliver Wilmot. Seventh, Oliver White. 8th, Chris Brook. 9th, James Partridge. 10th, Nick Horn. And 11th, I'm just so tired, sorry. This is a lot of talking. A lot of talking. 10th, Nick Horn. And 11th, Max Chowdhury. And there you have it. Please bear in mind these results are provisional, pending any kind of complaint or comment from our drivers. So, all being well and these results remaining as they are, these are your finishers. This is your winner. Now, the complexities of our scoring mean that we don't yet know everyone's finishing positions. That will take a spreadsheet or two. But what we do know, of course, is that Samuel Rasool is our Thunderwood Sim2Race champion. So, over the coming days, we will be speaking with him to just work out our next steps and hopefully bring you lots of exciting bits and bobs as the year progresses. Whether that's this year or next, who knows? The world is very topsy-turvy these days, but hopefully we have some fun stuff in store, both for Thunderwood Racing and for Thunderwood Sim2Race champion Samuel Rasool. So massive congratulations, incredibly fast all season, dominant, fastest in practically every single session, and a true favourite amongst our Thunderwood Sim2Race community. So a very big well done to him. Thank you very much to all of our drivers. And that's it. That is all for Thunderwood Sim2Race. Real Motorsport does now resume. But for those of you who have enjoyed our venture into sim racing, do not worry. There is more to come, and it will be bigger and better than even this. And so, leaving you with something to look forward to, that is that. And thank you all for joining us, and I'm going to just play that intro video again, but this time as an outro, because it was incredibly cool. Good night.